General Manager Tony Mazzucco coming to you with our weekly Facebook Live update. We're going to get going in just a minute as soon as folks give a chance to log on. We've got some COVID updates, including some updates on our numbers and a couple of other announcements. And of course, tonight is town meeting, so we will get going in just a second as folks log on. All right. Hey, folks. Hey there, Catherine. Thank you for joining us and for joining us every week. Hey, Kate. We are going to go ahead and get started as folks are logging on now with our weekly COVID-19 updates. So a lot tends to change in a week. The good news is we are now in the yellow. Last week, hey, Alyssa, we were in the red. It's not because the numbers changed. The state has adjusted the framework by which they determine whether communities are green, yellow, or red. Now, on the one hand, it's a little bit like moving the goalpost after the game has started. But what we actually feel is the governor made a wise decision in adjusting the framework to look at more than just the raw case count. So to account for the case count as well as the percent positive rate, to be in the red, you now need to have a case count over a certain level and a positivity rate over 5. I still think if they were to look sort of comprehensively at determining the risk level by community, they could probably come up with still a better metric and refine it a little bit more. The challenge is if you look at just one number, it's sort of not looking at the total or sort of looking at the whole picture. The other problem is that there's always sort of a demand to know, what's going on in our community. We want to know what's going on in Norwood. People in Randolph want to know what's going on in Randolph. People in Marblehead want to know what's going on in Marblehead. And we understand that. You're really going to sort of look at the statewide data because remember, we may live in a community, we may live in that town and work in that town and rarely leave that town. But, you work in another town, somebody from another town works here, creates a lot of challenges. But the state's moved to a framework where you need to have a certain number of cases and a percent positive rate over 5%. We have 79 cases in the last 14 days. That's it's not a pretty big increase, but it's about a 10 or 15% increase from where we've been seeing. So our numbers are definitely going up. Our percent positive rate is at about 2.9%. That's not a bad rate. And what's interesting is we were last at 2.9% in about late August for a positivity rate. It had been continuing to come down and down and down, went a little bit lower and has now come up. So our percent positive rate is around where we were in late August. Our cases per 100,000 is around where it was in mid-May. So that number is obviously on the upswing. Every probably Friday now, if we don't have it up today, the Health Department will be putting our data up on the website. It's getting delayed a little bit. We sort of have the data, but getting it out there takes some time because the state's giving us data later. But we're at least able to check that percent positive rate, which is important. Now, on the good side, our testing numbers are still continuing to go up. Norwood Hospital has opened a testing center right in time to make it convenient. You do need a doctor's order, but that's as simple as just calling your doctor and saying, hey, I want to get looked at and I want to get a test. Can you please fax it over? They fax it over to Norwood Hospital, and you're able to go get a test. We do have an allowance through that program with the hospital for uninsured individuals, just as we did before. We'd started that program. We were the first community in Massachusetts to get a local testing program up without state assistance. Of course, we know that the hospital closed in late June, so unfortunately we're now, it's taken them a little while to get their testing center back up and running, but they do have one. They have been running tests through there. I've heard it's worked well. A couple of kinks at the beginning, but that's to be expected with any new program. But look, you can get tested at most urgent cares, most doctor offices, or my recommendation would be everyone should, if you can, try to get it done at the Norwood Center, at the Norwood Hospital Testing Center. Cindy, shoot an email to Bernie Cooper in the manager's office. We usually don't give out, sometimes we'll give out a second recycling bin. We generally don't give out second trash bins because they tend to get filled up. But you can always email him at bcooper@norwoodma.gov and he'll see if there's anything that that he can do. So we're no longer in step 2 of phase 3. I know that's confusing. Last week it was, we're in step 2 of phase 3, and we're going back to step 1. We're now in step 2. I'm sorry, I think I got that backwards. So we're no longer in step 1 of phase 3 because we're now yellow. These things happen. We looked at our numbers and knew we were going in a direction. The state didn't give very much advance notice of changing the metric. So a little advance notice, in fact, that we saw it online posted by a news agency, and then we're able to do the calculations and see that we were getting into the yellow. The state did not send us any of that information ahead of time, which sometimes is challenging for us. Let me just scroll down here to pick up the comments. So, you know, our another sort of negative statistic, and there's some good news at the end of this, the Mass Water Resources Authority, so the MWRA, which provides water and sewer services for about 40 towns in the greater Boston area, including Norwood, they track through the sewer waste the overall level of COVID RNA that's in the sewage waste. Our numbers for the southern region, which is Norwood is a part of, it's probably about 15 or 20 communities, are up to where they were in the spring level. Now, that article went around, we got one or two questions about it. What that means is it's the amount that they're detecting in your poop as it gets flushed. I would rely on an epidemiologist to let us know whether or not that's a really great determinant of the overall level of COVID, but the sewage gets tested, the effluent as we call it gets tested, and they're able to see what the rate is. It is up, so there is more COVID out there as one metric, just sort of on a general sense. So our numbers are going up, both in Norwood and everywhere else in the Commonwealth. And the hospital case count is going up around the Commonwealth. So we should be concerned about that. The challenge that we're facing locally is there is still no one thing that we can tie spread to. We do know that where you do see cases are people working, where they're working closely with other people, particularly in the healthcare field, but any number of jobs where you're working very closely and in close quarters with other people. We saw some travel-related cases, not a ton, and we are seeing cases early in the summer, especially we saw cases from people gathering with other people, parties and everything else. We still have not tracked any cases to people going to restaurants and eating and drinking. It's not to say that there isn't any there. I know you keep seeing some news outlets put out that, you know, there's restaurants are really dangerous or they're spread. We haven't tied any to restaurants. It depends really on who you go to a restaurant with, and I'll give you an example. If you have a family of 5 and you all live together, if one of you gets COVID, chances are at least a couple of the other people are going to get COVID. We've talked about that. Those are our household clusters. If that family of 5 goes to a restaurant 7 nights a week, the likelihood that they are going to get COVID from somebody at the restaurant or give it to somebody at the restaurant, minimal. There's really no close contact. Servers are wearing masks. You're not really close enough to anyone else to make a difference. Obviously, if you are actively sick and you're sort of coughing off into a nearby table, sure, it's certainly possible, but the risk level is minimal. However, a family of 5 that invites 2 other people out from 2 different households, so now there's 7 people out one time, you now have 3 households that are exposed, and they're all going in their separate directions after that. That can create a problem because it's leaving that little household bubble. Now, if they're people you see regularly, there's slightly less of a risk there. The only reason being that chances are because you're in regular contact with it, you're likely, if they get sick or you get sick, you're going to end up transmitting it one way or the other. If you go out with let's say a couple goes out with another couple that they don't see that often, we always recommend maybe you should not, don't always do that. Don't do it too often. Or lay low the next couple of days so that way if somebody ended up being sick, you're not spreading it off too much. But let's take a case where 4 people from 4 different households go out, and then they're going out with different groups of other people. The spread goes up and up and up. Sarah, so, there's not as much data as we'd like to see on the ventilation systems. And remember that prior to requiring masks to be worn, and it's funny, I don't know if we'll ever feel comfortable going back to normal, but you picture your family of 4 sitting at a table, and then a waitress comes over, and what are they doing? Hi, what do you want? Hi, what do you want? Oh, I love that drink. Let me get you that. Here's your drink. Just think of how much interaction there is there with the spreading that is largely decreased by the wait staff now wearing a mask. I'm not blaming the wait staff in any way, shape, or form, but just think of how we did things previous to COVID. Can things spread in a ventilation system? It's certainly possible, but where is it coming from and where is it going? Because early on, everyone was convinced that planes through their ventilation system were going to spread a lot of COVID. And then other studies have come out saying, that's not really the truth. It's not necessarily the case that it's spreading. It still spreads mostly through person-to-person contact. I'm a lot more aware if I'm near somebody not wearing a mask, if I'm at home or something, and seeing droplets or something. Maybe you notice it in your household members. But when you start to think about how much your droplets, and we're all sort of afraid of the invisible droplets, but there's a lot more visible droplets that you slightly see and you may not feel, but they sort of come out as you're talking. One of the theories is that the only risk to eating and drinking is that your mouth is a little bit more moist and there's just more stuff sort of coming out. It's a little gross, but it's not so much the ventilation systems as it's that person-to-person contact. It's not to say that they're not the risk, but you're not seeing that in as many places. That being said, being in a small confined area still limits the overall amount of airflow in that area. So I guess where you're right is that it is about airflow, but I don't want people to think that ventilation systems are bad, or that ventilation systems are somehow causing that spread. We haven't seen that anywhere. It's not to say it doesn't happen, but a bunch of people in a small room with no air spread, you're going to kind of interact with each other and have it go there, which is why we recommend, to the best extent practical, staying with your household. We know that people, while restaurants are open, are going to go out with other households. It's about looking at your personal risk tolerance, but also look at how much you're contributing to the potential spread. So if you go, Sarah, if you and I go to a restaurant, we're from different households, and then the next night you go with 2 people from 2 different households, and I go out with 3 different people from 3 different households, and then the third night I go out with 2 other people. Well, now all of a sudden you've got a dozen households between maybe 7 people getting together. So those dozen households, if the average person at that household is 3 people per household, now there's 21 people possibly all exposed. That's a lot. So it's not just about a family of 4 or 5 going out or a group of people going out once. It's how many people are going out and how often they're going out. If you're out to breakfast with your book club and then you're out to lunch with folks you went to college with, and then you're having dinner with the neighbors, and then the next day you're inviting your parents over, stuff like that is where all of a sudden you've now possibly exposed a lot of people, and your own exposure level has grown quite a bit. So that's when we talk about mitigating it, and it's really about thinking about how much exposure you have, how often you're doing it, and when you see people outside of your circle and you're sort of in a more close or more intimate circumstance, to the extent possible, try to hold on from going out again with other people. I understand that weddings happen, birthdays happen, things like that happen. You just want to go out. It's a lot of math in my head. It's think of how many people you're going out with is all it is. I don't want to pick on couples, but let's say couple A goes out with 2 people, and then the next night 2 different people, and the next night 2 different people, and the next night 2 different people. Now you're becoming like a super spreader. I'm an example of that. Before I ended up testing positive, God, if you looked at where I had gone in a week or 10 days, I was in a million different buildings, the state house, at schools, town building. It's just, I've tried to calm a lot of that down. COVID makes it easier, but just think about how much you're going out and where you're going out, and that will hopefully reduce the spread. Wearing your mask helps. I think people by and large have gotten better at wearing their masks. Washing your hands always helps, and just being aware of what you're doing. If you're not feeling well, stay home. If you're not feeling well, stay home. I know not everyone has that opportunity, but for the love of God, if you're not feeling well, please stay home. If you are a business owner out there, not every business can accommodate work from home, but if you can, you should work from home. We got a couple questions about school cases, and I think one of them was around the lines of, how come we're getting school cases, but we're not seeing whole groups of kids quarantined or groups of teachers quarantined? And there's a couple of reasons for that. Our school cases that we've seen, a couple related to travel, and again, most people have siblings in reasonable close, sorry, I was just thinking you would remember how many people I came into contact with. Most school age kids have siblings. So again, when a family tests positive, most of the people in that household, usually 3 out of 4, will end up testing positive. So if you've got a 2nd grader, a 5th grader, and a 7th grader, and one of them picked it up at a basketball game or a hockey game, chances are that the other little siblings might end up testing positive as well. But we're seeing travel, we're seeing some sports. But remember that kids, we have several hundred kids in Norwood at least that are learning remotely, and we've had cases among remote learning students, same as we've had students in the schools. Most kids are only in school, at least at the public schools, 2 days a week. So that's one of the other reasons you're not seeing, there's 2 reasons you're not really seeing a lot of the spread in the schools as of yet, and that could always change. One is, remember that kids are only in 2 days out of 7. So a student may go to school Monday, Tuesday, they may have an exposure Wednesday, and then it's Friday when they're notified. They get a test on Saturday. Their mom and dad keep them home Monday till they get the test results, and then they test positive. And we've had that happen. So, and I also think my understanding is parents are being a lot more cautious about, hey, my kid's sneezing this morning, I'm keeping them home just to be safe. I think that's a wise idea as well. If you're not sure, again, I fully recognize that there are some families that don't always have that option, and it makes it difficult with taking care of them, but that's always a wise decision. Sadly, where most kids are getting COVID today are their parents. That's not to say that somebody couldn't go to school sick with a cold, COVID positive, and end up infecting other students and teachers. So beyond the fact that most kids are only in school 2 days a week, and parents are more sensitive about keeping their kids home, which is a great thing. I certainly wouldn't want to be a student today, but that's a good thing. The other thing is Norwood Public Schools are actually doing a fantastic job managing this and keeping the distance and keeping things safe. The cleaning protocols of the facilities are better than anywhere else. Maintaining the distancing and maintaining rule following has been great. There have been no cases or spread or anything tied to the schools doing, or I should say not doing, what they're supposed to do. So Paul Riccardi, Dr. Thompson, the school's administrative team, and all the teachers, they're doing an incredible job. It's a case of when you do it right, you can see good results in not seeing that kind of spread in the schools. So to sort of summarize our COVID data, numbers are going up. We need folks to take it seriously. We need folks to be safe. It's really about your personal choice and what you're personally doing that makes all the difference in the world. Stay home and stay out when you're sick. Reduce your total social interactions to the extent practical. It doesn't mean don't go out with people, but please try not to go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday with different groups of people. That's heading it. Try not to go to house parties. If there's an important life event, we understand people want to celebrate it. Thanksgiving's coming up. We do know that we're asking everyone, I know the CDC and the DPHs as well, try to keep it small this year. I know that's unfortunate. We have older family members we don't get to see that often, and other folks, we always look forward to those traditions. Try to keep it simple this year. And please, please try to be safe and practice good habits. One other thing, somebody had mentioned, kids are in school, but, some boards and committees are meeting remotely. Why are we doing that and saying kids can be in school, but people aren't meeting remotely? Remember that sort of from a public health or an epidemiological standpoint, controlling the spread is about the totality of our actions. So it matters what we do here in Norwood, but it also matters what everyone is doing. Reducing unnecessary interactions is what's critical. So if you think of going into a store that can't really sell online, or going to a restaurant that needs you to support them, that's sort of a critical thing. Kids being in school is critical. A board or committee meeting, a PTO meeting, a civic group meeting digitally, those really aren't critical. You can get 90–95% of what you otherwise need to get done doing it digitally, so you should do it digitally. I made the same argument to folks when it came to accessing town hall services. If you can do it over the phone or by mail, you should. The reason being that you don't have to have that interaction in person, and try to save those interactions for the things that really matter, keeping our businesses going and keeping kids in school. Those are things that are important. Government meetings can take place remotely, and I know we've had some issues with town meeting because of the complexity of the laws around town meeting, because it's Massachusetts and we don't like to change things. But when you have unnecessary interactions, that's when you're spreading that risk for out a reason. Lorianne, for your specific questions, I would email directly Dr. Thompson at the school email. I believe it's dthompson at Norwood. Norwood. Go on the website. It's norwood.k12.ma.us, I think. Cindy, question: if you didn't come to the Facebook Lives, what are the ways that can keep up with town stuff going on, e.g. town meeting? You can always check our website and check our different social media feeds. We try to put a lot of information out there. The school website puts a lot of information out there. A lot of folks like watching the selectmen's meetings on Tuesday night. There's usually a lot discussed there and a lot of updates. Those are sort of must-see TV. Norwood Community Media records most of everything we do, and we put them up. They actually generally take these Facebook Lives and put them up on their web page and their Facebook page. Norwood Community Media also does a great Friday night newscast. You may not get into the weeds with, this is what the ZBA approved or anything like that. But if you want to know what's going on in town and for top news, check out Norwich Community Media as well. That would be what we recommend. Does the Remote Academy have a mystery? Yeah, so there's Dr. Thompson's email address. I would email him directly, Lorianne. That's the best way to make sure you're getting the results that you need and getting the information that you need. Many without masks, including kids, do they not know the risks? Kate, I will never understand it. I happened to get a haircut today, and I felt terrible that my mask fell below my nose for a second. I said, "Oh God, let me quickly put my nose up." I'm wearing masks all the time. I know they're frustrating. Teachers are wearing masks for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. It's about personal behavior. I could see somebody walking down the street, nobody's around them, and maybe they're not wearing their mask. I've gotten the habit of just putting my mask on when I enter town hall and leave town hall. I went in either Saturday or Sunday to get something, and there's no one in the building. Thank you, Catherine. There's no one in the building, and I'm just getting in the habit of putting my mask on. We still forget, but I think you're right. It's just going to be that habit of just please put the mask on, wear the mask, and again, be cautious about when you're expanding your circle beyond the people you see regularly. I used to walk around town hall and visit offices. Now when I do it, I kind of lurk at the door and I wear my mask as opposed to sort of walking in and sitting next to somebody's desk. I try to keep a little bit of that distance when possible. We do a lot of our internal meetings by GoToMeeting, so it's funny sometimes where I'll be in my office on GoToMeeting, and then Bernie will be in his office, which is across the little office suite, and then Sagal will be downstairs, and then Tom McQuaid will be up in his office, and then we'll have a chairman from one of the boards will be remoting in from home. So even within a couple of offices, the number of times that Bernie and I are on GoToMeeting together and we're both in our offices 15 feet apart is just, it's helpful. It's very helpful. Cindy, yeah, the board meets every Tuesday. They've been doing every other Tuesday to make the meetings a little bit longer, so they're a great meeting, great way to watch. I did say I would end the COVID portion of our updates with some positivity. Antarctica has not reported a single case of COVID since this all began. A little bit of a joke there, but we always need some humor. So, speaking of town meeting, since it comes up quite a bit, town meeting is tonight. It is in person, just due to the complexities of having called the town meeting and not being able to switch it to a remote meeting. Again, town meeting is in its original form 300 and some odd years old. So sometimes the laws don't change quick enough to make things easy and flexible. We do believe that the January town meeting that we'll have to take up the bulk of the land use articles will be a remote town meeting. It'll be an exciting experiment for us, but we will do what we can do to make it happen. Those of you who are town meeting members, we did lower the quorum, but we do encourage you to attend tonight if you can. We'll have the same set of distancing that we did in the fall, or sorry, in the spring. The area has been cleaned spotless by the facilities department. They've done a great job, and we think it'll be safe. We think it'll go relatively quickly. There's 3 items on the warrant. One of them is just a motion to balance the budget. We were waiting to sort of see how state aid would come out. The state has actually not completely finalized a budget. However, they've told us to go ahead with the latest numbers they gave us, so we'll take them at their word. So we just need to move a little money around to balance the budget for the year. We need to make an appropriation for the school's hybrid and remote learning model. The hybrid model is what we're doing now for most students. The remote learning academy is a state mandate that comes without a funding attached to it. So Sarah, that's a good question. No mailing about the info sessions. Didn't know and can't watch them for tonight. So a couple things about that. We did a mailing to everyone about a planning board session. So it was sort of a very early session about the planning board. Only 6 people attended. We put the 2 information sessions just on social media a week ahead of time, and we got about 20 people to each one, and the views on those have been pretty high. So on the one hand, I agree with you. We're always trying to get more information out to town meeting members, but it seems like sometimes when we mail things out well ahead of time, nobody pays attention. Not that we're intentionally saying the heck with it, do it quickly. We're going to try to build a better town meeting calendar going forward. One of the things that'll help for the fall and the spring is we're probably going to try to do capital in the spring along with land use in the spring every year from now on. Sorry, in the fall. It's not to say that we wouldn't make any corrections or adjustments in the at the annual town meeting. It's just we tend to throw everything into the annual town meeting in May, and there's just too much information, and it ends up being too many information sessions, and there's so much out there that it's a lot for a town meeting member to take in addition to you got to do the budget. So we're looking to try to break it up that way and just make it a little bit more efficient for everyone. We can mail more things out. Well, it's possible that they may not be town meeting members, but out of the 18 or 20 or so people that we had on, a majority were town meeting members. And again, that's not a lot. That's not even 10% of the body. But we also track the page views on the town meeting page. We do know that those get a lot of hits. Maybe they're not town meeting members. But again, the last mailing we did out for an information session got next to no one to show up. And I think out of those 6 people, 2 or 3 of them were folks who were paying close attention to what the planning board was doing anyway, and has attended the planning board sessions on it and has attended the joint meetings. So it's a little tough. I mean, we're always open to suggestions, but it seems like everyone wants us to do A, we do A, and then we don't get any input, and then we do B. Most of the information has been up on the website for a few weeks. And again, those info sessions got replayed quite a few times. They're on the town's Facebook page and on NCM, and I know NCM has scrolled them on their feed quite a bit. That's one of the best ways we find to have people to be able to sort of watch and rewatch them is through NCM. NCM lets us know kind of what is popular on their end and what is not popular on their end. The Facebook Lives are popular on their end, and they said that the town meeting sessions, which they blasted out there, are there. But again, we're always open to suggestions. It seems like when we send out mailings, they don't get the most bang for their buck in terms of actually getting people to attend a session. But we can always do more. It's just the evidence has shown they're not. They generally aren't working. We've done budget sessions the last 2 years. The year we didn't do a mailing with those sessions, we had more people. So I don't know if people see something in the mail and they ignore it. Question from Julie: will there be a larger effort to gather town meeting members' email addresses? I wish we had an email address for every town meeting member. We would probably send more emails to town meeting members with information. People don't like to do it. And it's a fair point, Sarah. Official government business that serves official notification. I'm all for using the mail. I still like to mail people cards. I mail out about 100 Christmas cards a year. And it's just a matter of we send them and then they go in the trash is what we're finding. What we'll do is we'll take a look at where to submit the email address for town meeting members and make sure that it gets updated. Just have them email the clerk's office directly. But it's still, I think we end up with 70 or 80, and when we've tried e-blasts that list before. We did it about a year and a half ago with one of the land use items, and the number of them that come back as no longer in use, it's just tough. I mean, it's not a reluctance on our part. It's just we keep trying and it's not working. We need some good people to rally their fellow town meeting members. Maybe if people wanted to sort of self-appoint themselves precinct captains. We don't have to publish the email in the book. It does become a public record, technically. We can't control that. We don't need to publish it in a book or put it out there to all other town meeting members. The only problem is if somebody says, I want that list of town meeting member email addresses, we do need to do that. We had talked about could we get town meeting members a town email address. We can, but we do pay per email service, so that becomes a little complicated as well. But the more information we had for town meeting members, it would be we'd love to get more information out. One of the other things we can do is try to revamp the town meeting webpage. And usually we just post documents there, but maybe we could try to segregate that out on the website, make that a little bit more robust, and just push everyone to that one site to say, hey, everything is always here. Here's where you'll find everything. Feel free to email us any thoughts or suggestions. We're always willing to do more to get more information out to town meeting members. We used to do no real presentations, and then we started doing presentations. We want to get more information. 2 years ago, we started doing Municipal Finance 101. We saw that there was a lot of interest, but then it dropped down a little bit. We want to bring it back this spring, because I don't think we did it last spring because everything was a little crazy. But we are always willing to do whatever we can to get more outreach out to town meeting members. The third item that's on the warrant tonight, so the first one is balancing the budget. The second one is an additional appropriation for the Remote Learning Academy and the hybrid model, is the capital and the infrastructure plan. Both of those are on the town's website. The capital plan is it is mostly, I think, on the one page, Julie, if you check out the town meeting document page, but maybe what we can do is maybe it's a little too buried and we can just sort of have it a little bit more prominent on the website to have sort of everything there going to one location. But the third item, the capital plan, the full capital plan is available on the website. It actually was sent to town meeting members last spring. There have only been a couple of adjustments since then. We've moved capital off to the fall. It's our usual litany of projects every year. Some engineering and design projects, some stormwater projects, our vehicle purchases, facilities work. We are borrowing more this year than we normally do in an effort to hold on to free cash, or what's known as free cash. It's surplus revenue. The benefit of that being just gives us a little bit of flexibility given COVID and everything that's going on. I think it was a good plan. Our free cash certification came in today, so we are as projected at about $8.7 million, which will let us close out this year, have some for next year, and then have some for capital in the fall. So we're doing well. We just wanted to hold on to it given the uncertainties of what's going on for COVID. The one change to the capital plan that's a little different this year is we've added the infrastructure plan, looking to do 2 borrowings this year, each one part of a concerted effort to both pave more roads and line more water pipes. I think I've shown before the pictures of what a lined versus an unlined water pipe looks like. Helps with fire flows, helps with the quality of the water, helps with your water pressure, prevents leakage. Interestingly enough, I was asked how much water do we lose a year out of the system. So we basically think of it as one big meter with the MWRA, and they send us a water bill. But we know how much gets pumped into town. There's a calculation done that we work on with a consultant in the DEP and the MWRA to then determine how much water we use for things like relining projects where we're diverting water, or hydrant cleaning, fire flows, etc. And then we come up with the calculation of how much water I'll answer that in 1 second, Sarah, because that's a good question. So how much water we're losing, and annually we use about 980 million gallons of water, and our loss rate, or our unaccounted water rate, is about 10%. So give or take 90 million gallons of water a year. It's a lot. It's not unusual. We're kind of in the middle with the MWRA in terms of our water loss. Sarah, as I said, we are borrowing more than usual, but that was by choice to hold on to free cash to give us more flexibility given FY21 and 22's budget. If we had not, let's say COVID hadn't happened, absent water and sewer, there's about $5.5 million worth of school and general government borrowing. That probably would have been maybe $2.5 million, which is around what we're normally at, and we're still below the 5% threshold on our financial policies. But again, we would do the same thing if we weren't trying to hold on to that free cash. So it was part of a plan by the Selectmen and the Finance Commission to say, hey, until we have some certainty what's going to happen, let's go ahead and borrow for most of this year's capital plan. And we did move a couple more items to free cash because we do have the free cash, some of the real smaller ones. But it was hold on to the cash, so we have that budget flexibility. And where it was a good decision, I mean, had we gone and spent a majority of our free cash last year on capital, which we otherwise wouldn't have done, the $700,000 we need for the remote and hybrid model would have been tougher to come up with. We would have had to cut things out of the operating budget, borrow less. So most of the projects, if you read through the list, we're not doing anything that's particularly sexy. So when we talk about delaying a project, we're not really doing any nice projects. We're not really doing any additional projects. It's fixing buildings. It's replacing old vehicles. It's doing some design work that, I mean, one of the plans that's in there is design work for looking at some of the stormwater improvements we're going to need. And every time you delay a project, the cost just does continue to go up. So whether it's a building project, I mean, there's a project to replace the alarm systems at the school buildings. I think at the elementary schools, the alarms and the intercoms. Sure, could we delay a project like that? Yeah. Why are we? It's a project that needs to get done. The longer we go without doing it, you're then just building up a bigger year down the road with more projects to do. We're not at a point where we have the financial flexibility that we're doing a lot of fun projects, where we're saying, let's add this and let's do this really cool project. We're kind of saying, let's fix our building. So if we said, well, let's borrow less, so that way we have additional flexibility and have less free cash, that sounds good. But at some point, we're just kind of kicking the can down the road. And as you know, Sarah, for a long time, we kicked a lot of cans down the road, and we don't want to get back in the habit of kicking cans down the road. Because once we do, at some point that year is going to hit where it's, hey, we did less capital, we did less capital, we did less capital. Uh-oh, now we got to do $12 million worth of general fund borrowing, and how does that happen? And free cash is okay right now, but what if we have a year where free cash is 1.4 million and we can't really do anything? So I know we're a little worried about borrowing too much. It's my biggest frustration because I would like to get us to a point where when we're borrowing, we're only really doing it for the larger projects. Is there any place we can see the amount of money the town schools received due to COVID and the associated expenditures? We can find a way to do that. So there's sort of two COVID-related funding sources. One is the CARES Act, which the town has received. The schools have separate money that they've gotten that's a little bit more restrictive. It's about $2.7 million in total. What that's been used for, almost all of our PPE purchases, our FFE, so furniture, fixtures, and equipment. We've offset costs where we've lost staff. And not lost staff, but we've had staff we've had to replace due to COVID exposure. We're paying for portions of the extended day program. That's a small amount. Our testing program with the hospital, expanded public health staffing, communications, it's all within there. We can get the, if you just Google CARES Act, it shows what you're eligible to put it for. The state's a little complicated. I don't want to blame them. I know it's sort of federal money that flows to the state, and we have to account for it two different ways. So the reporting ends up being a nightmare. But we received our second allocation, about $1.7 million. But that's what it's mostly going to. We can get a report up on the website somewhere. All the PPE we've had to buy, which is enormous. Lots of cleaning supplies. We're unique in that believe it or not, there are some health departments in the state that have not received any CARES Act funding, that the town has just sort of taken it and run with it. Some towns have not really used their CARES Act funding for schools. An example of some of the money we used last year, I think we spent $240,000 of CARES Act money on Chromebooks for the school department. Not a lot of towns have done that, but I don't know what they're spending their money on because it's fairly restricted. The state had said, you know, what you could spend your money on, so it's not like we could sit there and buy police cruisers or pay down debt service or put it into an OPEB account or something. So I don't know what some towns are using it on. Some towns held on to their money hoping to use it as a budget fix. The state had initially sort of said that they would allow that, but then they didn't allow that. It's offsetting costs elsewhere in the budget where we're seeing something go up as a result of COVID. But like I said, mostly PPE, FFE, part-time and temporary staffing to help. It's paid for, you know, the software, the remote work for municipal employees and school employees. It paid for all the Chromebooks last year. We can get a list together. Every time I wonder if we're spending money that's CARES Act related, I think of the town of Acton, which hired a Zoom meeting coordinator with their CARES Act money. So it must be nice to be a rich town that's your only need for it. There's other items that it could be. A lot of our food programs we've used to offset some of those with CARES Act funding and to keep the cafeteria staff fully operational. So that's what it's gone to. We can get a list together for sure. I was talking about the infrastructure plan. We have a road plan that would be 5 separate borrowings, one authorized each year, which gives us sort of an off-ramp that would do about $2.5 million worth of road paving each year for the next 5 years. We're behind on roads. We're at a good level, but we need to get caught up, so we need to look at doing something to get caught up. If we do each of these borrowings for the next 5 years, we'll kind of be caught up to where the $1.6 million we have in the operating budget between our Chapter 90 funds and the town's allocation will keep us in a good place. We just posted it there. There'll be some handouts on your chairs tonight. The water borrowing project would be 10 separate borrowings, about $4.5 million a year. Water work is always borrowed for. You never, anywhere you go. Those are long-term bonds, about a 1.72% impact on the rates each year that we do it. The goal would be at the end of 10 years if we do them. And again, we've built it so we have an off-ramp each year. If rates go up, rates go down, or there's too much construction or something changes, or there's another priority that comes up, we have that off-ramp, but it'll to try to get all those pipes lined, reduce that loss of water, help the fire flows, help the water pressure, but also help reduce the breaks and the leakages as well. So those are some important infrastructure projects. One of the benefits of doing them now is the cost of borrowing is cheap. It'll likely never be this cheap again, so now's the time over this year and the next few years to get some of those projects done as well. Question from Jackie, is the town hall open to pay bills at the window yet? The answer is yes. They recommend you call ahead, and our recommendation is always, if you can pay online, or drop it in the payment box behind town hall. And that's always our recommendation, but if you do need to come in and pay in person, you can. A couple other projects that we got a few questions on, other than the infrastructure plan and the capital plan. One of them is the kitchen at the fire department, and it's about a $450,000 project, and a few folks said, wow, that seems awfully expensive for a kitchen. It is. Remember that the fire kitchen that they use, it's really a commercial kitchen. It wasn't properly built as a commercial kitchen, unfortunately, when the building was built in 2002, which is one of the reasons it's falling apart. It's a kitchen that serves 15 people, 2 to 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The fire department never closes, so it's just sort of fallen apart. If you think of a normal kitchen remodel costing you $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, multiply that by the time and the use that it is, you're kind of at that number. We use Gienap Architects to come up with that design estimate. We actually think our facilities department can make a substantial impact on the price of the project, and hopefully bring it in at maybe half, maybe save $100,000. We actually used the same vendor that the food services uses to purchase their equipment, to cost out some of the equipment for us if we were going to try to do most of it in-house. And even they came up with about $100,000 for the equipment alone for the kitchen. It's a heavily used kitchen, and it's partially that kind of a generic residential kitchen was put in when we built the building, and that's not what it is. I mean, it's cabinets, for instance. There is not a commercial kitchen in the world that uses cabinets. You always use stainless steel tables that are open and for storage, and they last 50 years. So it was just not built right to begin with. We'll have some pictures for town meeting members. I don't know if we've gotten that document up there. Yeah, we do. Doris, we have some for town meeting members. If you email the manager's office, they can send you a couple of the pictures the chief took. It's just, you kind of look at it and it's like, you certainly wouldn't want to eat there, and it's not just about making it nice and pretty. It's time. If you had a residential kitchen and you served 15 people 2 to 3 meals a day, 365 days a year, your kitchen would be pretty beat up, and it's time we replace it. I mean, remember that the firefighters live at the station. And yeah, Doris, if you email us, we can send you some photos. Eddie, we agree it's high time to get replaced. We think that number is the top number, and we can get it a lot cheaper. Our facilities department, which is sort of new with the townwide facilities department, hasn't taken on a project that large. They think they can probably do 60, 70, 80% of it in-house, and then only have to contract out for a portion of it. But we're just cautious because it's the first larger project they would have taken on as a sort of singular department. We've got a question about, do we provide assistance? The answer is we do. I don't see the specific question here. Yes, for people with help the elderly and people, fuel assistance. We have a small amount of fuel assistance that we run through the general manager's office. It's through Self-Help Inc. out of Brockton. We sort of coordinate that. I'm not sure the deadlines. You can email the manager's office at managers@norwoodma.gov, and Sharon Cartier in my office can work with you on that, or anyone who's interested. We do have the Gift of Warmth Fund, which does sometimes help folks with one-time assistance for a utility bill. You can either call the Citizen Information Center, or you can go ahead and use the you can email us and they can get you in touch with it. Yeah, Doris, you're right. I mean, if anyone's ever worked in a commercial kitchen, they don't really just have residential wooden cabinets that open. They didn't build it correctly then. It's been well taken care of for how much use it gets. But again, I was in a new fire station a year or two ago, and I kind of laughed because what do you do when you walk in? Stainless steel countertops and stainless steel shelving, and you're right, it lasts the couple of decades. We'll see if we can get those pictures. If Joe's producing it, if we have them available, we can see if we can get a link to them. It might be easier to actually email them because I don't know if we have them up on a web page, but you look through the fire kitchen and it almost looks cool in a couple of places where they have open shelves and no cabinets. That's because the cabinet doors have broken off so many times that we just couldn't put them back on, and it's just an open cabinet. And again, it takes care of our firefighters 7 days a week. They order out sometimes, but not that often. So it's an expensive project. It needs to get done. One other question we got on the capital plan was there's what we call design money in there. And some of it seemed a little funny. It was design money for carpet replacement. It's like you got to pay somebody to design carpet replacement. We use the term design money, and what that usually means is it's either actual design, so it's engineering or architectural design, but it's also preparing the bid specs for us. So procurement goes through and goes through a procurement process based on the legal requirements for procurement in Massachusetts, which is complicated. You have to go out to bid in certain ways and certain dollar amounts. But what we're paying for is usually it's an architect or an engineer or some sort of a design professional to put in the technical specifications in those bids. And for carpet, you might say it's just carpet, 5,000 square feet, and just order that. We have to specify the material that the carpet is made with. We have to specify the glue that is used on the carpet. We have to specify the plan and program for removing what's there, what remediation needs to be done, how the materials are to be disposed of. All this has to do with complying with environmental health regulations, complying with the building code, and ensuring that if we don't put it in our bid specs, we have to make sure that we get we put it out to bid. We have to take the lowest bidder unless they're unqualified. So we have to make sure that we're getting what we need. So it's things that, in your home, you can usually work with a carpet vendor and just say, hey, replace it in the kitchen, or kitchen, I don't know why anyone would have carpet in the kitchen, sorry, replace the bedroom carpet, and I like that carpet there. But we have to specify in our bid documents, as I said, the type of material it's made with, the type of glue that it's used to adhere to the floor. Everything has to be detailed by a design professional in our bid specs. Otherwise, we run the risk of not getting what we're paying for, or again, we got to take that lowest bid. We don't want the taxpayer to get screwed as well. So I know it sounds funny when you're seeing design for carpet and design for painting, but even then, we have to specify in our bid documents. We anticipate, 50,000 square feet of paint. It needs to be this specific type of paint, and this is the process by which it has to be installed and painted, and this is how you're going to remove the other paint, and these are the chemicals you need to use. We have strict regulations about how things are disposed of. We have to put that in there. So it's just hiring a design professional to ensure that. When you do it once, sometimes those bid docs are usually good for your next couple of times doing it, but the public safety building, for instance, the volume of flooring and carpet that's being replaced is complicated. It's a little easier in a newer building where you don't have to have asbestos. The minute asbestos is in there, forget about how specific your bid documents have to be. Same thing with painting. There's like VOC paint and non-VOC paint, and it has to do with the fumes. There's certain paints you use in certain environments, and you need to make sure that's all worked into your bid docs. Otherwise, the taxpayer end up getting shorted on a project. And remember that we've been in business for 148 years. So what we don't do is just say, slap a coat of paint on it, it'll look good for a while, and we'll see where we are. I mean, we're not going to sell the library. We're not going to sell the public safety building. So when we look at the investment horizon for our buildings, it has to be with the idea that we're taking care of taxpayer property that's been handed to us, and it needs to go on for the next generation. So those are the capital plan items tonight. We're hoping to continue to do capital in the fall. Just a couple of other announcements. This fall, Shop Small in Norwood. Campaign run by the Friends of Norwood Center. We're encouraging everyone to shop small this fall in Norwood, and we're going to be releasing our own sort of Norwood Day promotion. We can't have a traditional Norwood Day, but we're going to be encouraging everyone to go out a certain day later in the month, probably the day or two after of Thanksgiving. It might tie in with Small Business Saturday to make sure that we're buying something local, eating somewhere local, shopping local, wearing local stuff, and doing something good locally, whether it's helping out a charity or civic group, or doing something as simple as leaving good reviews for local restaurants and businesses. Yes, Sarah, we would never sell the library, but that's why even with something like painting the library, we have to approach it with care and caution and make sure it's done 110% correctly. The next time you are in the library, Sarah, if you look around, you'll notice they will have a bunch of new LED lights courtesy of the Facilities Department and our Green Communities Grant. So kudos to Paul Riccardi and the Facilities team, Dave Ruggiero, our Energy Manager, the State's Green Communities Program, and Charlotte and the library staff for making that happen. So we are now energy efficient, more so in the library, and a couple of other projects as well. Last but not least, the school lunch program. Please partake in the school lunch program. We have the weekly family meal program running through December, and the school lunch program, we are now serving students at St. Catherine's as well. That's a big help to the school department. Please partake in the program if you have kids. You can pick up breakfasts and lunches. It's a great program. They're great meals. Today, I believe it was sun butter and jelly sandwiches for the cold lunch option, so I didn't get one, but I'll have to call the CAF staff and get one for next week. But please partake in it. It doesn't take a meal away from anyone. It doesn't cost you anything. It actually helps the program. In particular, helps out our fantastic cafeteria workers who have worked every single day for this through this pandemic. Question from Doris. You want to run for town meeting in the spring? It won't be easy or feasible to knock on doors to get signatures. Is there any way to get around this given COVID? The answer is no. Candidates managed to do it for all of these elections. You just got to find a safe way to do it. I think town meeting doesn't require too many signatures. I know what some folks did. I believe the Colleen Briley did is set up a table and post it on social media and said, hey, come sign the table when you can. So I think that's a great way to do it. Otherwise, be safe. By the time you would probably need to get those signatures, we may be in a better or worse place for town meeting. But unfortunately, democracy still moves on as well. And we'll probably be doing a remote town meeting in January. I don't know about May. The world will likely be a different place come May. So with that, I encourage you to check out our COVID data on the website. Check out the town meeting data, particularly if you're a town meeting member. It's not too late to email us any questions that you have. And for those of you who are town meeting members, if you have questions or if you have suggestions on how to better get information out there, we're always looking. We're always trying something different to get as much information out there as we can, however we can get it out there. So feel free to email us right at managers@norwoodma.gov, or you can always email me directly if you'd like. If nobody has any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end our live here. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Town meeting is tonight. You'll be able to watch it on Norwood Community Media. And we hope if you're a town meeting member, you go. It should be a fairly quick and straightforward meeting. All the information is on the website. Any questions, you let us know. Thank you, everyone, and please stay safe out there.